Hi, Nick here from Pods with Nick and James. Just a quick one before we get into this podcast. I want to say a massive thank you for the support that we've received since starting these podcasts. We thoroughly enjoy it and we look forward to creating more. If you want to have your say on any topics that we've discussed or suggest future topics, then you can do so at www.reddit.com/r/Nick and James Pods. And if you want to support us, you can do so for from as little as £1 a month, and you can do that at www.patreon.com/pods with Nick and James. Anyway, back to the podcast.
Hello and welcome back to Pods with Nick and James. I am Nick and this is James.
Hi there.
Today we're joined by a lifelong friend of mine called Puds. Say hi, Puds.
Puds.
Very good. And today I decided that we would cover a topic which everybody knew we would get to eventually, but I thought we might as well cover it now. New year, new us, let's have a go. It's references to extraterrestrials throughout history. Have you guys got any ideas of any kind of references that might come up during this conversation? James?
I have several ideas. Like we've spoken a little bit in the past. I know that although it's not seen as many as a historical account, and with many good reasons, but I won't go into that. I know in the Bible, I can't remember which book it is, which is really annoying me because this is normally the book of Isaiah. Seems to be describing a spaceship, and I know that there are. You know what? I'm not going to do too many spoilers. I know there's a couple of things we've spoken about to do with. I think it's in Hinduism or in kind
Yeah,
of just in
yeah.
Indian folklore. But other than that, I'm not. I'm not too certain. I just know that a lot of people have seen a lot of things throughout history, and it is recorded.
Yeah. Puds, anything?
I'm finding it interesting. The whole DNA manipulation, the stories of the earliest religions, like the Sumerians,
Yeah,
talking about the Anunnaki. That's
yeah.
that's interesting me at the moment.
Yeah. That's something that I'll come to a bit later. I've got a bit of story time with Nick a bit later, and we'll cover that. Um, but yeah, obviously, James, you mentioned references throughout the Bible. I think one of the most famous authors to do with references throughout the Bible was Eric von Daniken, who wrote the book Chariots of the Gods. He was raised a Catholic and decided through his interpretation of the Bible that there was obviously like alien interventions. For example, there are numerous mentions, as the book titles, of chariots of the gods, implying obviously chariots of fire, and how obviously a vehicle that would be entering the atmosphere that early would be seen, or a vehicle that would be seen at that early in history would be labelled by the only thing that was known, or the most likely thing that was known, as in a chariot, and anything that comes through the atmosphere would burn up, therefore might be titled a chariot of fire, and that's kind of where he was going with that. Um, there's also he references Watchers from the Book of Daniel as aliens. The Watchers, as most people interpret them, are just aliens, fallen angels. Are just fallen angels, whereas Eric von Daniken quite strongly believes that they are aliens. Any thoughts on that, guys?
It's interesting.
I mean, yeah, like to be fair, ancient people would like their only vehicle was either a boat or a chariot, and what we call spaceships, they might very well call a chariot. It's just kind of a language thing, like with the Russians calling their earliest, um, well, their astronauts cosmonauts.
Yeah,
Astra meaning star, cosmo meaning cosmos. It's the same. It's the same feckin' thing, but just with different language.
yeah,
There's an interesting symmetry to what I mentioned earlier. The Anunnaki mixing, changing with the DNA of the primates there to make humans.
yeah. So
And in the Eric von Daniken thing you were saying about the Watchers, it's interesting in the Bible. It mentions the sons of God mating with the daughters of man, and that could easily be construed as some alien interference.
yeah, so the Bible's got many references of angels and even God himself, which, if looked like from a different angle, would could be perceived as aliens. Obviously, if you think of angels um, and God as highly intelligent beings, you could see why and a highly intelligent being appearing to the primordial back then, or the rudimentary human back then, they may be given almost a celestial or deity status. However, they also mentioned that we were supposed to live in naivety until we were tempted by the knowledge of the gods, in the message of the snake in the Garden of Eden. Um, that's interpreted now as the alien knowledge being passed on to humanity when we weren't supposed to have it. We were supposed to be naive beings that were under the control of the gods. Um, that's the interpretation as far as Eric von Daniken's book goes, anyway. And yeah, you're right. The mention of um, the the breeding between the sons of God and the daughters of man, creating the Nephilim, I believe they were labeled as in the Sumerian texts, which were essentially the giants of the Bible. Um,
It interests me that you've also got kind of, it's somewhat bastardized, but that's also used in the Diablo games, obviously,
yeah,
as kind of like what your hero is and what's to explain why you're able to go up against ridiculous enemies and stuff.
yeah.
Um, yeah, but other than the ancient texts of the Bible, like Puds, you mentioned about Sumerian texts.
I was just thinking about what Nick was saying about us being docile up to a point, and that makes me think straight back to the Sumerians again. You know how the gods or the aliens were interested in having us under their control, and it wasn't until one of these aliens or gods wanted us to be free that they started teaching us the knowledge that we would need to be able to stand on our own 2 feet. A lot of the stories seem to all say the same thing. I find that's very interesting.
Especially given the fact the Sumerian texts actually came before that of the Bible and the Hebrew texts. Um, yeah, yeah. It's not the only holy book in history to have, or holy books, holy scriptures, to have mentions of or references of alien or extraterrestrial influence. For
Don't
example,
want to go there.
for example, in the Hindu texts and the Hindu Sanskrit writings, there are references to vehicles, which James alluded to a bit earlier, called Vimanas. Now, I don't know if you've seen these pictures, guys, but they look. There's even detailed diagrams of the construction of what can only be described as flying craft in ancient Hindu texts. That blows my mind when I heard it and I looked it up and I read what I could of about the texts. It's absolutely incredible. But if you don't know, listeners, go and have a look up pictures of Vimanas, and they are literally thousands of year old documents of these Hindu um, rocket kind of spaceship kind of looking things. Think about I suppose it kind of looks ziggurat kind of, but if a ziggurat could fly. If you have you seen the Hindu temples in India?
So, just to circle back to it, it is interest like it was really interesting how the architecture was really similar to the Hindu temples. So it's a real what you're describing there. What's the name of them again? Because I know you did show them to me a
Vimanas.
while. The Vinmanas were, yeah, it's almost it's part Hindu temple, part spaceship, part, for lack of a better way of saying it, Laputa. For anybody who's seen the Studio Ghibli film about a floating city, it's and then knowing that the things that you showed me were drawings from a ancient book, um, is well,
They do look like temples in the sky.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's literally temples in the sky, and it's they the images do look like blueprints. I can't say that they don't. It's yeah. Well, I don't know. For a man like myself who does think he understands history, it was troubling and enlightening at the same time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I wasn't just that I was blown away by, but within the Hindu text, there's stories. Obviously, within all holy texts, there's stories of great wars. Now, the Hindu ones are quite interesting because they are stories of their like godlike beings having wars in the sky, um, wars in these kind of flying crafts above the earth, above humans, using weapons which,
They
when
sound like nuclear weapons.
exactly when they're described, they burn brighter than the sun, and they have the power of 1,000 thunderbolts and stuff. Um, the impact it decays life, and the area was unable to be inhabited for thousands of years after, etc., etc., and all these kind of things. If you interpret it in a specific way, um, like they sound like kind of weapons of mass destruction kind of level stuff that we have to deal with nowadays, you know. Um, but they could also be interpreted as other things. I don't want to kind of push the fact that they are um, alien weapons and whatever. Obviously, the one thing that I don't want to do today is kind of say this is what I believe in. I think all of this stuff is really interesting and kind of it's definitely worth hearing, and definitely worth looking into, even if you end up just going, well, that's kind of interesting, and then moving on from it. But yeah, some of the wars that they had were incredible. I mean, I believe Oppenheimer quoted the Bhagavad Gita in his post-nuclear explosion speech. He he mentions a few people laughed, a few people cried. He says I was reminded of the text of the Bhagavad Gita where Vishnu, or was it Krishna? I can't remember. Was talking to the uh, the man he was traveling with, and he took on his four-armed form, and he quoted, I have now become death, the destroyer of worlds," and that was the quote he used in his post-nuclear explosion or nuclear test, um, kind of alluding to the fact that, oh my God, this might have been done before, and you know what, this is absolutely incredible. The kind of power, I won't say good, but definitely incredible. He kind of knew then the level of power that he'd created by creating the nuclear bomb.
Oh,
Perfect statement.
Huh?
It was a perfect statement for the event.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, it's very apt. It's why it's so well played, or it's why it's so played and also does appear. Um, in pop culture, even in minor game references before the Oppenheimer film. Um, yeah, it's apt.
Yeah. Um, Obviously, it's not really a reference to Alien. I think this one's just a little bit interesting, but it's another fact I just want to throw out there. At Mecca, there is the Kaaba, which is the big stone box
Mm.
that the Muslims will worship. Do you know there's a stone implanted on the side of that
You
box?
mean the meteorite?
Well, nobody's been able to. Obviously, it would be a massive sin to take a sample of it and test it to know what it is. But they say that the stone on the side of the Kaaba was given to Adam, the first man, or it was given to Abraham by the angel Gabriel. Um, so their perspective of it is that it was a celestial stone that was given to the Islamic faith by
Well,
celestial beings.
I mean, there is such a although so from a personal point of view, I do believe in God, and but I with aliens, I'm honestly not sure, but I will admit there are some very interesting images out there, and there is a lot of stuff throughout history. It's interesting that to ancient people, there'd often be one and the same. Like priests in Babylon were more astronomers who did a few rituals during the day, astronomers and mathematicians more than anything else. So there is always going to be that ancient crossover between things that move in the heavens and then the idea of a heaven or ascendant being or something along those lines. Like even it's interesting that the Kaaba's got that stone and possibly, as you said, Puds, that meteorite. Although I'm not going to say I know what it is. Um, it's interesting that that parallels with the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus, which was founded after a meteorite or a rock fell from the sky and inspired the silversmiths there to start making idols to Artemis, the god of the hunt, from its materials. Um, yeah, sorry, I don't know. It's just interesting. It's also interesting that Mecca was a holy site before Islam. Um, like the Kaaba and that place was the center of Arabic culture and used to house hundreds of idols um, before Muhammad took the city without bloodshed and well actually no I think he might have destroyed all the idols and then took the city. I don't know the order of it. I need to research my Islamic history more. But yeah, the Kaaba is an ancient site of worship. Sorry,
It's
I don't
quite
know where I'm
common.
going with
It is
that.
And
quite
am I
common.
wrong? Did Muhammad live in the Kaaba as like a home at some
Well,
point?
I can't say that for certain. All I know is from what I've read, um, Muhammad lived like a very oh my god, this I really don't want to offend people, but I'm just going to say it, and then
We are very
if we
ignorant.
need, yeah,
We
we
don't
are,
wish to offend anybody.
yeah, that's it. From my own research into Islam and into the startings of Islam, Muhammad seems to have lived like a very regular man, and the startings of Islam seem to be incredibly egalitarian to the point where the people didn't know who when Muhammad passed on the leadership, um, and I've forgotten the word for the leader of Islam at that time, but when he passed it on, quite often those people would be so humble up until about the fifth one, because no, it was either the fifth or the sixth, because the fifth or the fourth got murdered because they'd pray in regular clothes in the mosque in amongst the people and could quite often be mistaken for just a regular bloke. I don't know if Muhammad lived in the Kaaba at any time, but I know that he lived and then seems to have just died of illness in his old age, which is different from a number of other prophetic figures who, either ascend or descend or have a horrible and violent death.
I'll tell you what,
Again, I
it
apologise. I
is.
don't know where I go. Short thing, I don't know. I don't think so, but I'm happy to be proved wrong by either listeners or by yourself, Puds.
I have no idea.
It does quite nicely hand me over to another reference, slightly more modern. This one. Can anybody tell me another head of religious state that lived as a normal man before this, before a religion was born from him?
Referring to any kind of alienness, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. With alien reference, this is.
Well, I know of a religious guy that started up a religion that a lot of the people in the religion don't realize is very alien based. I was brought up in the Mormon church, which I have no affiliation with, nor do I believe anymore. But I was very much indoctrinated into that. And the guy that started up the Mormon church was Joseph Smith, who was well known at the time for his tall tales. And after reaching the 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemasonry, he then started up the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the long and short of it is that they believe that God lives on a planet closest to a star called Kolob. A lot of LDS Mormons have no idea of this, but they are, if you think about it, because they also believe that Jesus Christ is the literal son of God and one of his many goddess wives. So they believe and worship the son of an alien. If you look into it, this is exactly what they believe in.
Yeah, so I did a bit.
Shame.
I did scratch up a little bit on the Mormon faith just to make sure that I had everything together before I go on this. So Joseph Smith was visited in a dream by a being that can only be described
Moroni.
as a being called Moroni, who told him about some scriptures that were hidden under a tree in America. And these scriptures were apparently written, they were the notes of Jesus Christ himself, who after his crucifixion and ascension to heaven returned to minister in America.
Exactly that.
Yeah, so Moroni.
I think the pronunciation is Moroni, but
Yeah.
annoyingly,
Moroni was correct.
the only way. Oh, okay. I'd only heard. I only knew that from the songs, from sadly the Book of Mormon.
By the guys that
musical
wrote South Park. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen
Which
it,
is
but I really
fantastic.
do want to see it. Yeah.
It's spot on and it's brilliant.
So Moroni was a being who he wasn't an angel as people interpreted it within the church. He was actually a being that once lived on Earth but now resided on a star within the Pleiades star system. So yeah, he was an extraterrestrial being. And like you said, Puds, they believe that God himself was a being from that same star system, his son,
Yes,
his
many
offspring.
gods before him, many gods beside him.
Mm-hmm.
He was like us, trying to live the most pious life to become a god of his own planet.
Now, obviously, that's quite a recent religion, I say, in foreign historical terms. But there's an even more recent one, which I think has even has an even more
I would love to hear what you have to say on
outlandish.
Scientology.
It has an even more outlandish. And now I'm not. Please do not think for a second that I am telling you that this is incorrect. I have to be very careful because they are very Sue happy. This church. Now you might know Scientology as that Tom Cruise or John Travolta one, because of course they are some of the more famous names that are within the church. But the church itself was the brainchild of a science fiction author, L. Ron Hubbard, who, over the course of his lifetime, published hundreds of fiction stories. In fact, he holds the Guinness World Record for the most published works by a human being within his lifetime. It's an incredible fact. I thought that. It's not relevant to the religion, but I thought it was definitely worth adding in there before I went into the story of the Scientologists' belief. Now, this is not common knowledge to members of the church. You have to reach a certain level within the church before this information is informed to you. By which time, I should point out that one of the practices of Scientology is something they call cleansing, or clearing, I think they call it, which is essentially opening up to your deepest, darkest secrets. And all of these things are, it's supposed to be clearing your body of negativity and boxing it away and dealing with that so that you can ascend and be a more enlightened being. But all of the cleaning or cleansing that you have is recorded. So by the time you get to this point, when you're told the story of Scientology, they've got so much on you that if you start talking about it, then they can throw it out there and kind of like slander you to the point where you will never be accepted into society again. Just another point worth mentioning. But yeah, anyway, the story goes that 75 million years ago, a dictator called Xenu of the Galactic Confederacy brought humans to Earth and dropped them into volcanoes, releasing their thetans, or souls, into the environment. These thetans are angry and upset, and have caused us to become infected by these thetans, and we are now infected and over affected by negative emotions. That's why humans as a race on this planet are so mentally negative, and that's what their belief is. But an incredible heritage to a very modern belief system.
It's very interesting. I have absolutely no criticisms of at all.
The silence of James is all I need.
Well, you know what? My own religion's hands aren't clean, so it's very difficult to throw stones in a glass house. But having said that, no. No. What it's with the. Okay, I'm somewhat ignorant on this myself, but I actually genuinely want to know here. I didn't know that. I knew that the writer of the original Scientology creation stories was also a science fiction writer. I didn't know that they had produced the most. Held a Guinness World Record for producing the most work. Did he specifically mark his writings for the foundation of Scientology as... Oh my God, I can't... I know this is incredibly ignorant and incredibly stupid, and I apologise for even asking this, but just to put it out there, did he mark them as different from his
absolutely.
His fictitious work?
So he was actually a general in the he was an officer within the American Army. He worked. He was. There's a lot of questionable circumstances as to why he left the army. However, he says he worked within intelligence, and that's how he came to know the kind of things that he knows. But there's been a lot of questions about his mental health following injuries that he sustained within the army, and so the American government have questioned him in the past about his because there's been massive questions to the church itself as to whether it is even a church. It has now been quoted as a church and is therefore tax free, despite the thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds that it costs per person to be a member of the church. But he himself wasn't necessarily a very well man, but he does quite clearly state that this is intelligence that he gained over his years of working as a intelligence officer, at the same time as adopting these kind of clearing techniques himself, and then he was given the knowledge through the process of clearing, and it's all of kind of like an ascendancy to that point, almost like you have to be clear before you can fully understand the which is why me talking about it right now shouldn't really offend anybody that is a Scientologist, because I'm not clear. I don't have the clearing status that they have. Therefore, of course, I'm not going to comprehend it in the same way they are. Therefore, it's going to sound outlandish to me. However, to them that have ascended to that point of intelligence, obviously, they can understand it in a way that it's beyond me. It is beyond me. But yeah, there's some crazy faiths out there. The references that Puds kept alluding back to, the Sumerians. I do want to kind of do a little bit of story time with Nick over this one, because I thought this one was absolutely phenomenal.
Well, I'm glad that you said that, because I'm incredibly ignorant when it comes to both. So all I know is that a number of the creation stories of the ancient world start with the world, or the universe as they understand it, having a foundation of water. It's why one of the first people to be kind of recognized as a natural philosopher rather than a moral philosopher. Natural philosophers later became scientists, as we covered in the last episode. But the reason why he said that, or one of the reasons why people think that he said that everything is water, because it tied in with the Babylonian creation myths. I don't know the Babylonian creation myths. I don't know the Sumerian creation myths. I'd love to hear them. And I'd also... the reason why I asked about whether the Scientologist writer... what was his name?
L. Ron Hubbard.
L. Ron Hubbard kind of separated it, is because even in ancient times there were different genres of writing, and so there were mathematical works, there were fictional works, there were poetic works, and then there were factual works. So I just wanted to make sure, like even though the Bible says some weird, outlandish things, everything in about the way that it was written. And if I'm honest with you, I'm going to say this, even though it's probably going to get me into trouble with a lot of people, the lack of entertainment value of it kind of clearly shows that it was supposed to be a form of factual knowledge, if that makes sense. Like, and all stories are supposed to.
Certainly doesn't
read
all
like
the
fiction, generations, the generations written down, and all the laws are very fun to read.
Yeah. I'm currently going through them in audiobook. I'm not finding it easy, if I'm honest with you. But moving swiftly on from that. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that particular author of Scientology had separated that from his other works.
Yeah. So he definitely didn't say that it was fiction.
It with
much the same as Joseph Smith. He quite clearly said that it was prophesied, or information that was given to him from celestial means.
Didn't he? I'm really sorry to... Well, I don't mean to make you uncomfortable here, Puds, but...
happy, go for it. Anything to do with Mormonism, I hope gives some
brilliant. All right, so Is it true that he was saying that he was so the prophecies that he were given were written down on golden plates, that he was using a particular stone or a special
Yeah,
device
so
to...
um, the hill, Komoa, I think it was called, under the stone, the gold plates. He was reading through a hat. This strange thing with seer stone. He had put the stone into a hat, and then he'd put the hat to his face, and he was able to understand what these gold plates were saying, which were in a different language, which nobody else had ever seen, by the way.
Okay.
Only Joseph Smith had seen these gold plates. No one else was allowed to see them. So the only testament of the gold plates themselves were with Joseph Smith.
Okay, that's right. Okay, cool. I just wanted to double check my facts from the Book of Mormon, because that is something that they said. And unfortunately, like, although Matt and Trey, the creators of South Park, are amazing writers, I don't necessarily assume every joke that they make as factual or accurate. But I just wanted
What
to
I can tell you is the episode of South Park where they go into how the Mormon Church began
Yeah, I've seen that episode.
so it's hilarious.
I absolutely love
Right?
that episode.
It is the most hilarious thing I've ever seen. So you would think there's so much of that is just jokes to make you laugh, right? But the thing that makes me laugh the most is every single thing that's said, word for word, not one thing added or taken away, is exactly what happened.
Huh.
And that's what makes it funnier.
Okay, yeah, that does make it funnier.
Yeah.
I will also admit I also love the fact that although they made fun of the Mormon beliefs, what they did at least do continually was point out that that belief system leads them to being good people. Like Randy
Fantastic
goes round,
people.
yeah, like Randy goes to goes to beat up one of the Mormons, and he goes out there, and the Mormon just turns it round, and he walks in and like stands like, "Oh, did you go kick his ass?" And he's just like, "No, we're going round for dinner next week." Just like,
That's a very Mormon thing.
just absolutely, like, you gotta respect hospitality. Like, I just anyway. But sorry,
Yeah.
like, moving on.
Tangents. If you haven't seen it, listeners, please do go and watch that episode of South Park. It's definitely worth watching. They also did an episode on Scientology, which is worth a watch. Anyway, Sumerians. So this faith is possibly the oldest and closest linked with aliens within human history, purely because the story of it is specifically outlining alien intervention in human development. It's absolutely incredible. Now, this faith lasted for about 5,000 years. The cuneiform texts that were found were actually only found they were carbon dated to about 2,500 to 3,000 years BC. However, the faith did exist before that. It was just that was when people started to write it down. So the story goes a little bit like this. It tells of the Anunnaki from the planet Nibiru coming to Earth to mine gold in order to purify the atmosphere of their home planet. They brought with them the Igigi, who were a race of slaves who eventually rebelled against the Anunnaki and were slaughtered, leaving the rulers in need of a new race of slaves. They mixed their DNA with that of beings on the planet, namely apes, on Earth, and created man after many freakish failed attempts, namely the Nephilim, who were giants who had insanely strong power, but very little intelligence. Reference, of course, David and Goliath in the Bible, the story of the last giant. However, going back to this, Anunnakis taught humans to build their own dwellings and farms. However, they refused to teach them tool creation for fear that this knowledge would be used against them. Humans were allowed to live within their city, specifically within the Garden of Eden in the centre of their city. where their women lived while the men worked. The men's work was to mine gold from the planet in order for the Anunnaki to purify their atmosphere. Overpopulation led to many being banished from the Garden of Eden. Eventually, after a few thousand years, Nibiru returned closer to the Earth, which led to a massive problem with the Earth's atmosphere. It warmed the Earth's atmosphere, the polar ice caps melted, it caused insane flooding, which gave birth to the Epic of Gilgamesh, and the Anunnaki put what was left of the humans in boats to ride out the storm, to ride out the floods, and eventually travelled back to their planet Nibiru, leaving humans behind. Not before teaching humans tool creation, maths, language, architecture, hierarchical societies. They also appointed certain lineages as leaders and demanded they keep their bloodline pure in order to dominate over, in order to keep dominion over the others. They told them to build pyramids and ziggurats in the formation of celestial constellations in order to guide the Anunnaki back to Earth.
So that's the symmetry with what James was saying earlier, with
There's so much
David
symmetry.
Icke and the
Yeah.
royal bloodlines with the
Yeah,
reptilians.
there is so much symmetry. It's not just like there's so much symmetry with like the biblical beliefs, the Abrahamic beliefs. There's symmetry there with not just that, but geological sites around the world. You think about the Teotihuacan in South America. You think about the positioning of the Great Pyramids of Giza and how they are positioned within the
The
formation
Orion
of the Orion constellation. Yeah, so like there's so many things within that story that relate to like they reference other point, or they've influenced, I suppose, in many ways the cultures that exist on the planet worldwide. Either that or is complete coincidence, which I'm very skeptical to believe.
There's only too many coincidences you can take.
Yeah, now obviously Anu was their main god, the Nibiran god, and Ki was the earthbound goddess, man and wife, and that led to the name Anunnaki. And their offspring were Enki and Enlil. Now Enki was a friend of the humans. Enlil was the trickster, if my memory serves anyway. And I believe Enlil was the one that taught the humans the intelligence that eventually ended up with them being banished from the Garden of Eden. So was the fallen angel that taught Adam and Eve, gave them the fruit of the gods, or whatever it was that was in the Bible.
I honestly
Allegedly.
I wasn't expecting to hear anything about the Garden of Eden outside of the biblical references. It's interesting.
Oh yes,
that,
and Nick isn't just using that word. If you look into it, it's exactly the same word that the Sumerians used.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which obviously they speculate that the Garden of Eden was a physical place in around the Syrian kind of Turkish border, a land which is now completely off limits due to massive like turmoil and unrest in the countries. It is very dangerous that you can go and visit it. You are likely to encounter a bit of trouble along the way. However, that's the speculation, is that it's within that area. However, the Sumerian beliefs, obviously, they centered around the river Tigris, wasn't it, in Mesopotamia?
So it's I know that the biblical references seem to point towards it, the Garden of Eden being. No, it does. It's just I don't remember it exactly. I apologize for my ignorance. I know that it is in the Golden Crescent. I know that it it is supposed to be somewhere between the two rivers. I can't remember where
It
exactly.
was off of the Nile somewhere, wasn't it?
Oh, the Nile's
The Nile's
a
miles,
little,
miles a
little,
mile.
little bit
Trying to
south.
think
Though.
of where the Bible is actually mentioned.
I'm sure it
It's
was
where
the River
2 or 3
Tigris.
rivers meet.
Yeah, it was the River Tigris and a couple of others, which is around Iraq kind of area there.
Which is probably the birthplace of humanity, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that's
So
what they
you're probably
speculate.
Mm.
That's what they speculate within the Sumerian. Those who have researched the Sumerian beliefs, anyway. But yeah, I thought it was an incredible story with massive references towards like alien intervention. It really is. It blew my mind when I first heard about it. I was like, wow, this is absolutely incredible stuff. And I watched an entire documentary about it, which has happened to fall out the side of my head, unfortunately. But it really did.
If
A
you
couple of things stuck in there.
if you find that, could you send that to me? Because
Yeah.
that genuinely does sound interesting, though.
The
Yeah.
first episode of Ancient Civilizations goes into it deeply.
Okay. Fantastic. Puds, if you could send me the link afterwards,
It's on
Yeah,
Netflix.
I'll have a
Ancient.
listen on that.
No, that one's Ancient Apocalypse.
Ah, yeah, no, wrong one. Wrong. Ancient Civilizations. Yeah.
Okay, Ancient Civilizations on Netflix, yeah?
Yeah.
It'd be on Gaia.
Okay, fantastic. All right.
No,
Sorry, I realize.
yeah,
Sorry,
that's on-
listeners. I realize that's not good listening for you, but I think it's good for you to know our sources and to, have some
It'd be
extra
good for
stuff to
anyone
go
to
through.
watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Who wants to have their head completely blown or their mind
Go
completely
for it.
blown? So
Oh, I'm already struggling, but go ahead.
outside of religious references, I heard a mention of a West African race, West African peoples called the Dogon recently, who they're very much uninfluenced by the Western world, and they've had their beliefs, and they're very very strong on their beliefs. Their belief,
I have a feeling I know where you're going with this.
their belief
Because
is that
today.
has been their belief was about Sirius, the Sirius star system. They believed for 5,500 years that the Sirius star system was a binary star system. Yeah, a fact that was only uncovered by scientists with modern technology in 1950. The Dogon, who are tribal people worshipping gods from faraway star systems whilst marching around a campfire, I might add. They do say that their ancestors came from Sirius A, and this is how they know. And that in itself blew my mind.
You know what I read today? There's a lot of ancient peoples who speak of a time before the moon.
Yeah, I heard about that as well. There was a time before the moon, and the moon itself was placed into our orbit. There's a few interesting things about the moon, though, of course, that are almost very difficult to ignore, such as the ringing of a bell, the sound of the bell that it makes when it's impacted. Almost
All the
like
craters seem to be the same depth as well.
yeah, almost like it's hollow. Yeah, like Puds said, there's a certain maximum depth to their craters. Nothing seems to go any lower.
Distance and the size is perfect so that it completely covers the sun in a total eclipse. It's very strange behaviour.
Yeah, there's always a point that is constantly pointing at the Earth, despite its rotation.
Yeah, that's odd.
It's
That
the
doesn't normally
only-
happen.
It's the only celestial body in our own research that we found that behaves that way, and it's actually closer and larger than any other moon that we know of.
Very suspect.
That I will admit it does those things do always weird me out, and I think okay, so again, this is secondhand, half remembered knowledge, but I think it's that the moon is both 400 times closer to the Earth than the sun, and also the sun is 400 times
Times bigger,
larger.
like, yeah, it's
Yes,
crazy, isn't it?
so it's exact. It does really weird me out that you I don't know, it almost seems like an optical illusion, like the fact that
Suspect.
it's always the same bit that's facing us. And I just kind of also wonder um what ancient people would have been able to deduce if they were able to notice it turning, you know?
Yeah. I,
Like,
I couldn't tell you a reference to anybody that knew of it turning. Um, however, like Pud said, there is a number of things about it. The thing that makes me question, or makes me ooh and ah a little bit about the moon, is obviously NASA's own investigation into, because as the story goes, that as um, the fabled moon landing left the moon, they jettisoned their dead weight onto the moon, and the moon itself rang like a bell for a matter of hours afterwards. Um, not something
That's
you would
normal.
not something that you would expect from a solid piece of rock, you know. Um, and they were that intrigued by it that on their next unmanned visit to the moon, they deliberately dropped an even larger object onto the moon just to kind of see whether it was a coincidence or just a happening that was, or some malfunction with their technology. But it did, again, it rang for a matter of hours afterwards like a bell. Um,
Let's glaze over and not touch on the subject that NASA keeps saying we have to figure out how to get past the Van Allen belts to get out of low Earth orbit, and yet we somehow went to the moon.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely. I mean, there's many scientists that have said we shouldn't even be able to leave the Earth because of the amount of radiation around
It's
the
just
Earth.
more interesting stuff.
Mm, yeah, definitely. Can anybody tell me of any kind of artwork within history, specific pieces of art
Leonardo da
that
Vinci.
ring into your mind when it comes to um, alien influences or alien references? Puds, you said Leonardo?
Yeah, there's a picture, Leonardo da Vinci, where there's something in the sky. We can see two vehicles with people in them. People say, it could be the moon and the sun, but Leonardo da Vinci was a fantastic artist. And
That's the Crucifixion of Christ, isn't it? A painting from Kosovo, where the event shows two strange objects in the top left and the top right flying through
yeah,
the sky, kind of like triangular shapes. The best thing about these shapes is that they actually have people within them.
yes, and I'm under no doubt that Leonardo da Vinci would have been able to draw a very accurate looking moon and sun.
Yeah, because
To
they were quite
resort
common.
to ridiculous images like that.
Yeah, quite commonly in just to clarify why Puds made that reference. Quite commonly within ancient or older religious images, next to the if they ever painted the crucifixion of Christ, they would normally have a sun and a moon in the sky on the left and the right. Which is why you reference that, isn't it? But on this occasion, obviously, the proverbial sun and moon had beings within them, and they looked nothing like suns and moons. If I'm honest, they looked more like
It
pointy
looks like they're
rockets.
using aircraft in space
Mhm.
or in the
Mhm.
sky.
Yeah, James, you know any?
this is annoyingly one point where I have to completely admit my own ignorance.
That's okay.
I know that there are some, and annoyingly, I did study art, but
It's
none are
okay.
coming to mind.
I dosed up this morning on my facts.
Nice.
So in the Atsuro Bune, I believe it was Japanese, with the legend that says that in 1803 a circular disc-shaped object with glass windows and metal sheets washed ashore. A beautiful female being emerged wearing strange clothes, and this myth was immortalised into a piece of art from 1803. The shape is quite obviously like disc-shaped, and like they said, it was glass and metal that washed ashore. The Madonna and Saint Giovannino. This painting shows a shepherd in the background looking up towards a disc-shaped object in the sky, behind the Madonna looking at the baby Saint Giovannino. In India, there are cave
That pime
paintings.
is straight up a UFO.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I just looked at it.
Yeah. There are charamas in India, cave paintings that depict dish-shaped objects and oddly tall beings. They appear to show humans worshipping or fearing these beings. But my favourite, and I use this term loosely because I'm not one to have favourites, the one that kind of stands out to me the most is the Miracle of the Snow. Marcelino di Panicale painted the Pope Liberius inspecting snowfall in August in Rome. Now, if you don't understand why the Pope himself would be inspecting snowfall in Rome, it's because, especially in August, snow doesn't fall in August. It's like the height of their summer. So the fact that snow was falling in Rome at that point. Now he's inspecting a piece of ground where the snow is laid, a piece of ground which he later had a church built on it. Another one of those occurrences, James, reference to your comment earlier about a happening that enticed a religious site to become something. So yeah, the Miracle of the Snow. And in the sky, there's about 28 to 30 strange disc-shaped objects, all of which look like the common concept of UFOs. The interesting thing about that one is that there's numerous accounts within history where disc-shaped objects are seen in the sky, and then a fluttering of white or silvery kind of powder then falls down from the sky, no matter where they are on the planet, even if it's in the center of the desert or something. So I thought that was quite interesting that would be captured within a painting. Unfortunately,
this is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, that painting.
The artist is obviously very good. All the people look very well drawn, and these you couldn't mistake these for clouds.
Yeah, obviously I'll tell you what, we've got a Reddit, haven't we, James? I will post these the links to these images on the Reddit for anybody that is interested to have a look at. And there's obviously a few mentions of UFOs within ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, or at least they can be perceived as UFOs. But one of the most interesting sculptures that exists, as I mentioned earlier, is the Olmecs of South America have an image carved into a stone showing the great serpent Quetzalcoatl in a craft or forming a craft, and inside this is a human quite clearly wearing some kind of helmet. Inside this kind of whilst operating buttons and switches.
And it looks like flames coming out the bottom like a rocket.
Yeah, a really interesting sculpture.
If you haven't seen that, James, it looks amazing. It's difficult to explain what it is. Really difficult. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Once again, I can only apologise to the listeners for my own ignorance about something I should know a huge amount about. Like I am interested in classical painting, but I haven't seen a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, well, as I said, I'll put the links in the Reddit for people to take a look at. There, of course, is some rather large objects on the ground in South America, which, although they
Oh,
don't
are these
depict
the?
aliens, the fact they exist, it becomes a bit questionable when you think about why they would be there.
Yeah, why make an image that you can only see from the sky, where ancient people would have no way of getting up there
It's
or
High
being able
up
to
in the
see it?
sky.
Yeah, exactly. It's the fact that the ground that they are on would have had to have been sheared, flattened, in order for these images to be imprinted on the earth. Like they weren't just, oh yeah, we're going to draw a painting here because it's a massive flat area. It became so massive an area that they ended up having to remove some of the hillsides in order to continue their images. Absolutely
The sad
incredible.
thing is this must have been so incredibly important to them.
Yeah,
And thousands of years later, we have no idea why.
yeah, we're just sitting there going, yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it?
They put so much effort into something so big, and we can only marvel and wonder.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly it. Like, so much has been lost throughout history, and unfortunately, I was holding back the comment. Ah, so obviously it wasn't just an afternoon art attack. From what you described.
The ancient Nazcan Neil Buchanan.
hmm,
Let the camera go up as he just puts his arms out wide.
Absolutely.
exactly. But right, like, I really like that because it makes sense when it's on a hillside. Like, even in the by the close to the seaside town of Folkestone, you've got the White Horse
Yeah, you've got
of
the long
Kent
man as well.
on a hill.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you've got the long man and stuff. But the sheer scale
Miniatures.
is,
yeah,
yeah, like, by comparison, these things are tiny. Like, it's also interesting that you guys mention about the amount of effort that some ancient societies would go to produce these things. Like, I can't remember the official term of it. It's annoying. The heads on Easter Island, which then caused mass extinction because they'd used all of the wood on the island to move these heads around, and not
Are
to
they just heads?
No, they're actually bodies below the surface, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're whole bodies.
get out of town.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like massive. Yeah,
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
it's even more terrifying to think of, isn't it? Yeah.
That's even more terrifying. That you've just got these massive stone near, almost
In
near
the middle of nowhere.
yeah, near Colossus size statues, also all buried up to the neck.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, on an
What's going
island
And
in
on
the
all-
middle of the
and
ocean.
all facing out towards the ocean. Interestingly, there's architecture which exists on Easter Island, which is similar, if not exact, to architecture which can be found in Egypt, in Japan, in South America, and numerous other sites
Yeah.
around the world.
It would make more sense if Easter Island was part of a much bigger landmass at one point that would connect these different places.
I mean, it's a shot in the ocean. It is a drop in the well, it's a drop in the ocean rather. Like it is a tiny,
Exactly.
tiny island. You couldn't just the chances of you, I should say, the chances of you just stumbling across it, finding it, going there, going, oh, this is a nice place. Let me go back and get some mates, and then being able to come
let's
back
waste a
with
load of time making these massive statues in the middle of nowhere where no one's gonna find it.
it is really incredible stuff. But that's, I think, more of a terrestrial mystery than an extraterrestrial mystery. But I have reached the end of all of my research. I know there are a number of other points. If anybody else of the listeners has anything else that they want to mention, do pop over to our Reddit. It mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. But that, as I said, is the end of my research. Unless anybody else has anything to add, I think we can just round off there.
Something that I forgot to say earlier and really should have said is today was the first day of using my microphone that was given to me by a friend for Secret Santa. So thank you very much, Secret Santa, for the new microphone.
You
Realise
sounded
that's
great.
irrelevant. Thank you very much. Well, thank you to them, I should say.
Yes, and thank you to them from us, because your audio quality is fantastic. Anything else from you guys?
No, I thought it was a good conversation. Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you for inviting me.
You're more than welcome. It's been a pleasure having you.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, once again, this has made me aware of my ignorance, and that's something. That's something I should celebrate rather than mourn. Thank you very much for the research and information, guys. Have a good night.
And yourselves. Take care, guys. Bye bye.